In this chapter by Dr. Wayne Dyer, when I return to his books and start reading a book, it just reminds me of what an inspiring man he was, and this great teachings and a great example in many, many ways of his life, and kind of miss him when I go back and read his stuff. One of the ideas is to see yourself as a cell in the body of humanity. That you and I are like cells in a body, right? Your cell in your hand is part of your whole body. And you want your cell in your hand being harmonious because it affects the rest of your body, right? Of course. What a cancer cell is something that's doing its own thing, right? And it disrupts the whole system. Well, we're all a cell in the body of humanity, and so we have a responsibility as individuals to recognize not only do our thoughts and our attitudes toward ourselves affect us, but they affect the body of humanity. Isn't that amazing? That what goes on inside of you is one cell in this body, this living body. Miguel Ruiz, the author of the Four Agreements, used to say, we're all one living being. One living being. Wow, that's a tremendous idea. And it's so sad that human beings are still learning. You know, we're still trying to solve problems through war and violence. It's very sad, and it goes to show we've still got a long way to go, right? Yes. It's so easy to read metaphysics and get into it and think, oh, everything is, we're almost there. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But what I do believe is that the work that you do in yourself, if you want to call it work, for me it's passion, that spiritual growth that you do within yourself is helping to raise the vibration. And that, as Dr. Dyer says, you're here for a purpose. And you're here in the right time, in the right place. So the work you do within yourself is affecting the body of humanity, right? Not just saying that as a pep talk. You know, it's the spiritual reality, one body. And the work you do in yourself helps to raise that vibration. So don't feel helpless. Don't feel like, oh, what am I doing? There's so much trouble in the world. When you're doing your thing inside yourself, you're making a difference. And if you're guided to do other stuff, wonderful. But don't discount you being you. And growing spiritually is huge. It's huge. It's much more important than someone who is coming from a different motivation and they're doing stuff in the world, but the vibration's not exactly there, right? Uplifted vibration makes a difference. And so instead of, oh, it's so terrible, what's going on, and it's horrible and all that, of course we have our moments of feeling that. Let's send peace, let's send love, let's send light, let's send that high energy thought to these people. There's a lot of people kvetching about what's going on in the world, right? There's a lot of that going on. They don't need anybody else. Yes. We don't need more people doing that, right? We need people raising the vibration. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're about. We're one cell in the body of humanity. And if you can be a harmonious cell, which you're doing, and you're constantly elevating yourself, that makes a difference. Makes a difference. I think today's message just fits perfectly with the things going on in the world, because Dr. Dyer says, you'll see in a minute how our life is, this is what the view, the inspired view he wants us to have, is that your life, seeing the perfection of your life. And he saw the perfection of his life. He was born in 1939 when Hitler invaded Poland. He was conceived when Hitler invaded Poland. And he was born in May when they occupied Belgium. And he said that his life was to bring peace, to help people discover inner peace, inner love, inner self-reliance, inner compassion, the ability to forgive, that's what his life was about, and he felt that was the way for peace to be in the world. That he was born, one of the reasons he was born is to help offset the hatred that was happening at that time. And that's a very empowering way to look at your life. I don't think that's an ego thing. He recognized that he's just one cell in the body of humanity, but his purpose was to help awaken people to that inner journey, right? And as the Unity Center in New York, we came up with our vision, which is global spiritual enlightenment, right? That's what we'd love to see everyone awakening to that reality as well, wouldn't we? And he had through a hypnosis. Anybody ever gone through hypnosis? Through a hypnosis, he had a very powerful experience that impacted much of his life. And it was a conversation with God. It was a conversation with God. Now, this is his view, and it's a lot of people's view, that before you were born, before you went from the invisible reality, right? We came from the invisible. Physicists and metaphysicists both talk about invisibility becoming form, right? You got the quantum field becoming matter. And you and I went from the invisible, became a particle, which became a quark and an electron and an atom and then a cell, which contained all the ingredients of our eyes, our nose, our organs, our body, and it created. Now you and I went from that invisible into the material, right? And we grew in the womb. And his point is, you didn't do anything for that to happen, right? It just happened. The universe, the invisible reality, the divine intelligence created you in the womb. And you just allowed it to happen, right? And that same thing that took you through that process that created, it's an amazing experience when you think about it, isn't it? A little protoplasm becoming everything. That same intelligence that took care of us in the womb is part of our life. If we will just reconnect with that invisible reality we're a part of, it continues to take care of us. And here's where he then makes a leap from the connection between science and spirit. He says, just like you have volition in your daily life, you have choice in your daily life, it's not a stretch to think that you had choice before you came into this physical existence. That you chose this is the conversation he had with God. He realized that he chose his parents, he chose his experiences to fulfill his purpose on the planet. And so he was born during World War II. He felt this calling. That's the name of the book, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. He felt this calling to teach people about their spiritual nature, to help offset the hatred in the world, help people tune into the love and joy. And he had this conversation with God where God said, so what do you want to do, Wayne? Well, I want to teach people self-reliance. I want to teach people compassion. I want to teach people forgiveness. So God said to Wayne in this hypnosis experience, well, we're going to get your little butt, I'm editing a little bit, we're going to get your little butt down into a foster care living for about 10 years. So you're away from your parents. They can't interfere with your mission. You're going to develop self-reliance. And, well, who should my parents be? Well, we're going to make your dad Melvin Dyer, who was an alcoholic, a prisoner, and a thief, who's going to leave you when you're still a baby. And you're going to have this bitterness and resentment. You're going to learn all about forgiveness. And your mom is going to be, she's going to be a lady who is very compassionate, working herself to the bone to get all you siblings back together after 10 years of hell in her life. And compassion, you're going to see daily compassion on a daily basis. And that's what you're going to do. So Dr. Dyer says this, talking about the protoplasm that became our physical body, our physical being, that little particle. He says, in the particle and the energy field from which it emanated were the size and shape of our eyes, our legs, our mouth, and so on. So it feels intuitively natural to me to assume that in the field of energy, the very shape of our life was also encapsulated. That in that field of energy, before you were created in the womb, what you were supposed to be doing on the planet was part of that energy field that came into the body. He says, you see, no, that's it. That's all I wanted to say. So, a very powerful exercise, as he points out, is to look at your life. Look at the people who have been difficult for you in your life, in their attitudes, in the situations, the experiences of your life. Look at those and think about what were the lessons that came from that. What was the good that came from those experiences with the challenging people in your life, with the difficult situations? What was the good that came from that? Because his view is we chose those experiences before we even came in. I'm going to read his words on this. He talks about a beggar on the street. It says, a beggar on a street corner may have agreed to come into this world of boundaries to teach and generate the awareness that leads to more compassion in this world. He says, in an infinite universe where there are many lifetimes, what's one lifetime to come in and teach people compassion? Interesting, isn't it? That's a different way of looking at. Instead of being judgmental and critical of someone else, realizing, oh, maybe they've come in to teach me to have a greater compassion, or teach someone else. There's a story you might remember of Jesus' disciples asking him about a blind man. He said, Jesus, why was this person born blind? Did he sin or did his parents sin? Well, first of all, how could a baby that was just born have sinned? When would the baby have sinned? It implies possible reincarnation. See, we're not going to go in that right now, but that's what it does. When else would he have sinned? Jesus says neither. Neither. He was born that the glory of God might be manifest. This person might have had blindness to inspire other people, to learn their own lessons and to inspire other people. That's what Wayne Dyer's saying. He goes on to say, with an infinity before us, spending one lifetime teaching compassion doesn't seem outrageous. Similarly, the autistic child the blind person, the victim of violence, the aborted fetus, the quadriplegic, the starving child, and you, with whatever infirmities and difficulties you've attracted, are part of the perfection of this universe. The desire to change and improve our world is also a part of the perfection. So that's an important statement, right? The desire to change and improve our world is also part of that perfection. So it doesn't mean, oh, you don't care about the starving children. No, you may be guided to do something about it. But it's all part of the perfection of the universe that the soul had some choice in before it came in. Therefore, an inspirational attitude is less judgmental and more appreciative, with a keen eye for how God or source energy manifests. I have to tell you, that's a stretch for me, okay? And it's interesting that in the last week, I've heard it twice come in different places, that things happen not to you, they happen for you. And from different places, I heard that twice. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. So if before you were born and I was born, we made a choice to be born in a certain family, to have certain experiences so that we could fulfill and learn stuff and fulfill our calling, whether it's being abandoned, whether it's any number of things, is a very powerful way to look at things. And Dr. Dyer was a psychologist. He wasn't a dummy. He knows about trauma and he knows about things that people went through. It's a stretch for me because I have always tended to just think, well, it happened. So now let's learn from it and let's grow from it. I don't know why it happened. I don't really care why it happened. It happened. And you can't unhappen it. Right? Unhappiness is trying to unhappen things. Right? It happened. So what point is it to keep getting upset about it, feeling sorry for ourselves? It happened and it's now. It happened then and now is now. So what are we going to do now? Are we going to make ourselves unhappy about what happened then? Or are we going to learn and grow from it and live the now? Because there are people hanging on to stuff that happened 30 years ago and they're making themselves miserable about something that happened 30 years ago instead of now. What about now? So, as Michael Singer says, everything that happens is a result of the forces that caused them to happen. And a scientist would agree with that. Everything that happens is a result of the forces that caused it to happen. This person did something, this person robbed another person. Why? You could go back to when they were a kid, they were exposed to this, and this happened, and that happened, and this happened, and that happened, and all the forces led up to that person doing that, and that person happened to be there to get robbed at that moment. All the forces that conspired for that person to be there at that moment, you know, maybe the alarm clock didn't go off that morning, or the kids were late getting up for whatever reason, and they happened to, there was a change in the schedule, and they had to go down that street at that moment, and they were there at that moment while this person and all the forces led up to him being there too. There you go. Everything that happens, there's a reason, because everything that the causes before it caused it to happen. That's been my approach, is, okay, it happened, now what do I do about it? What can I learn from it? What do I do about it? Wayne Dyer goes a whole nother level. Because of his experience in this hypnosis, I imagine, to where he knew that all of this was meant to happen, and feels it's meant to happen in everybody's life, that we've all made these choices before coming into the planet. Have you ever felt that some of the difficulties or challenges in your life were meant to happen? That you learned from it, you grew from it. I've met people who've had tremendous challenges, much worse than any I've ever had, who years later they say, I'm the person I am today because of that. I don't resent it. I don't blame anyone. I've forgiven. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't be growing spiritually and living the life I'm living. Have you had that experience? I know I've asked lots of people over the years about difficulties that you've experienced. Would you change those difficulties? And most of the time people say, no, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. So maybe we did choose it before we came in. Maybe we did choose it. I know in my personal experience in the past, mainly when I was feeling down about something, oftentimes I would see someone who had a physical challenge. Maybe they were in a wheelchair or whatever, and they were laughing and happy and joking. And it made me realize, my goodness, if they're happy and joking and with their challenge, I can be happy in my skin. Yes. Right? And it happened so many times that I don't know, it was mysterious to me. Maybe they were born to help other people look at them and go, wow, look how happy they are. What am I worried about? So an exercise, which I did, 2 exercises, which I did because of Wayne Dyer's inspiration, is to go back and look at the challenging people, difficult circumstances, and think about what was the benefit that came from those. What did I learn? How did I grow? There's something really powerful about that. Because every one of them, I learned something from and grew from. Every single one. And developed compassion and learned certain lessons about life from every difficult experience. A lot of them from ministry. I guess that's why one of the reasons I'm a minister, right? You got to be a minister to learn these lessons. Okay. And also, that's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2. And Wayne Dyer says he learned from his alcoholic stepfather, who was angry and drinking all the time and, grumpy. He despised that behavior in his stepfather, but he said it became very empowering later when he was dealing with his own addictions. The other is to look at who your parents are and your siblings. And to look at and think, what have I learned from my parent? Why was I born to these parents and siblings? What have I learned from them? What was the impact they had on my life? And he says, it doesn't matter. You don't have to tell anyone else. It doesn't matter. You don't have to tell everybody else how your life pieces seem to come together. All that matters is how it works for you. For you. Anybody see how empowering that could be? To look back instead of getting upset about the family we have, getting upset about the siblings, getting upset about the parents, actually looking and going, oh my God, look what I learned from this sibling. Look what I learned from having this parent or not having a parent. Look what I learned from being raised by a single parent. Very empowering. I looked at it. I looked at, my dad, my mom, my stepfather, and lessons from all of them. Positive lessons from all of them that made a difference. My mom, I sometimes talk about negative stuff I got from my mother, but my mom was a wonderful lady. She really was. She loved everybody. She loved everybody. She had black friends, Chinese friends. She had all kinds of friends. She loved everybody. My mom just loved people. That was a tremendous influence on my life. To grow up, she gave friends. She had all kinds of friends. She just saw people. She saw people. And, the tremendous growth she must have done in her own life. It's because my mother, who was really her own mind, she thought and did the way she wanted to. She really, in many ways. And she studied yoga, in the 70s with Swami Satchidananda. And it's because of that I picked up one of her books when I was in college and started to read it. I go, wow, these weirdos aren't so stupid after all. And, so looking back and think, what did I learn from them? What did I learn from that? It could be tremendously powerful. So that's what he's talking about, seeing the perfection of your life, the difficulties, the challenges. Maybe you chose before you came in to have those experiences so that you could learn and become the person that you are today. Even if that didn't happen, you can still learn lessons from it. We can still learn and grow from those experiences. They happen for a reason, not necessarily, this is me now, not necessarily because it's a divine reason, but they happened because of the forces that cause them to happen, and we learn and grow from it. We can. That's Justin speaking. Wayne Dyer would say, oh, you chose that before you came into your body to learn and grow from. They're both empowering. So what works for you? That's a way we can live an inspired life, by recognizing that everything that happens to us, we can learn and grow from. And it can help us to become the people we're here to become. And that we are a cell in the body of humanity, and that whatever growth and development and unfoldment that you and I do within ourselves, the more empowered you and I become, the more we help uplift the body of which we're a part of. And heaven knows it's needed more today than ever before. Let's get still. Thank you, Father, Mother, God, for your presence and activity in our life. What a wonderful mystery we're a part of. The mystery of life. We're alive. That's incredible. Do we need any other reason to celebrate?